Sometimes, reading the Gospel and hearing about God's mercy, we may get the impression that we can continue to sin, because God's prerogative is to try again with us, to fix things, to understand us, to forgive us. Such reasoning is not an act of faith in God's love and mercy, but one of the gravest sins we can commit. Theology calls it the presumption of salvation, which means that we understand God as one who will save us anyway, even if we continue to sin for life. What we read in the Gospel today does not want to scare us, but to remind us that our actions have consequences. This should perhaps wake us up in not having a superstitious faith, but a faith that tells us that it is the grace of God that saves us, but we need to do our own part. And what can we actually do? What are we called to do? The answer is a simple word: conversion. That is, we need to change mentality, think differently, look at things differently, and therefore choose differently. And how differently? We need to choose following the way of the gospel. The real question is not whether we did something wrong today or not, but whether we made an effort to change our life so that it may be more close to the gospel. Today's gospel reminds us that the abundance of signs and miracles does not necessarily produce an abundance of results, because what changes our life is not having a sign or a miracle. What is really important is to transform our life into a sign, into a miracle. And isn't this the great lesson that the saints teach us? We often pray to them because we want to ask for and obtain graces for us. But we almost never think that the greatest miracle that the saints experienced is the miracle of their life, a life of conversion. Many of them have miraculously kept their faith and trust in God in circumstances where most of us would have probably given up. Many of them miraculously had hope when all seemed lost. Many of them have miraculously loved when it was least convenient and when it really seemed useless. It is this miracle that makes them saints. What is important is that they loved, and this love transformed their lives. Extraordinary signs may not be necessary. Judas came to kiss Jesus. However, that sign did not convert him. And where were all the crowds that Jesus fed when he was condemned and crucified? Where were all the blind, the lame, the deaf, the lepers that he healed? Signs are not substitutes for our freedom. Sometimes it's easier to say that we do not want to change, or we do not want to believe because we didn't receive any signs of God's presence and love. However, this may easily be a justification because it is easier to find reassurance in miracles and external signs. If the Lord gives us a sign, it is to convince us to convert our life and choose the gospel. Our own life can become the biggest miracle that we can see. Amen.